welcome to this episode of Observations, the program that takes seriously what Yahowah, that happens to be God's one and only name, had to say through his Torah and prophets. Last week, we analyzed really a singular statement and then tried to track down who the villains were in this particular statement so that we might understand it more completely. And we're going to follow through with that. We've got Scott with us and Kirk. How are you guys?
Good morning. Very good.
Okay, I'm going to start with good. I'm going to start with reading once again the passage that launched us into this, and then let's jump into what God had to say about these two villains. That one he wants us to disassociate with, and the other he is willing to protect us from. It begins. Now, Shamuel, that's from Shama and El, it means he listens to God, consistently spoke to the entire house of Israel. Israel means individuals who engage and endure with God. This is the household or family of Israel. These are Yahweh's chosen people. This is Yahweh's family. For the purpose of drawing near by saying if. So we have the introduction of a conditional clause. Now, a conditional clause is important because it means that if one party, the party being spoken to here, those of us who want to engage and endure with God, if we respond, if we come to know, accept, and act upon these conditions, then God is going to provide a promise. But the promise is conditioned on our willingness to come to know, to accept, and to respond to these promises. This is exactly the way the covenant works.
Right.
We looked at the dress rehearsal of the covenant through Noah. And it's true that Yahweh saved Noah and his family. But the process that Yahweh used to save Noah and his family is identical to the covenant. He provided Noah and his family with a set of instructions that Noah listened to, accepted, and then acted upon.
Yeah, the concept you're not engaged is bizarre.
Yes, that's the Christian concept, that you don't have to listen to what God has to say, you don't have to agree with what God has to say, and you don't have to act on what God has to say. And you can be saved even though you don't know who he is or what he's offering or where you're being saved to.
Or participate in it.
Or participate in it. You want to have a relationship with God, but you don't. Yeah. So you're not participating in it.
Yeah.
It's swell. Well, this is a conditional clause, and in the case of all relationships, a conditional clause. For any of you who have been in business, or for any of you who have been married, a conditional clause is both parties are making forming an agreement, and the responsibilities of the parties are being laid out. This is really how you raise children, by the way. How many parents have told their children, if you eat your peas, you can have some ice cream. If you clean your plate, then you can have dessert. If you do your homework, you can watch some television. That's a conditional clause. It's how we parent. Well, Yahweh is giving his children a conditional clause, and this idea that the benefits of the conditional clause would be provided to those who don't know, accept, or act upon the conditions is absolutely preposterous.
Mm-hmm.
But what's amazing here is the very thing that God is saving, rescuing, delivering his children from, is the very thing that Paul, the author of the Christian religion, told believers to submit to. So it's quite a conflict, isn't it?
This section that you've been working on is the most concise killer of Paul I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't mean to disparage a 2,000-page book on questioning Paul, but boy, there's one paragraph in here that just wipes him out.
Yeah, as we get to, as we dig deeper to understand the very thing that Yahweh was asking us to walk away from, which is the Astartes, and then we compare what God had to say about who she represents, who she's aligned with, Baal, the Lord, and what behaviors are being done in her honor. What we have laid out before us is Pauline Christianity. And that's going to be an interesting part of this discussion, because keep in mind that the things that God is asking them to walk away from, and this, Shamuel was one of the judges. A judge means that he was asked to execute good judgment to resolve disputes in accord with Yahweh's Torah teaching with the family of Israel.
Yeah, we call him a circuit court judge nowadays.
Yeah, but in this particular case, he had only one document and only one group of people that he was executing good judgment regarding.
Right.
Now, the document was the Torah, full stop. And the means, the people being adjudicated with regard to the Torah were the children of Israel, full stop. So, that was his job. He now would have come to exist shortly after the Exodus. The Exodus took place about 1457 BCE, so this is right around 1400 BCE. And the religion that he is ultimately going to describe as we get into who Astarte is Christianity.
Absolutely.
There is no religion in human history closer to this than Christianity. It is, yes, it's an outgrowth of the Babylonian religion. And yes, this was the religion being practiced by Israelites circa 1400 BCE. And so this is 1800 years before Theodosius imposed the religion of Christianity on the world. But what we're going to find, and we should not be surprised by the fact, that the same religion was being practiced 1800 years earlier, because really all Christianity is an amalgamation.
It's a repackage.
Yeah, of the pagan religions that came before. And
yeah, that's not even an original concept anywhere.
No,
but
there is not an original concept. That is true. It is all a regurgitation and a repositioning, if you will, of the original Babylonian religion.
So that should probably prove to you that when you're taking your orders from Satan, Satan being a malak, a fallen malak, they're not creative beings, and all they can do is twist, and once they do something, they just continue to do it. Of course, it did work.
Yeah, and that really is the bottom line with why the Jews were practicing a religion that absolutely was not Judaism. Now, God is not rejecting Judaism here. Judaism is the only surviving form of Judaism is rabbinic Judaism. It's Pharisaic Judaism. And that form of Judaism didn't even come to exist until right around 200 BCE. And so this is 12 centuries before Judaism. So what we're finding here is consistent with what you have stated, is that as a malak that is in what Yahweh refers to as a Shabbat. The malak are his Shabbat. Shabbat is a militaristic construct, not in the sense that they're weaponized, in the sense that it's a command and control regime. The thing that caused Hasatan, the adversary, Halal ben Shakar is his name, to rebel was the fact that he was vastly superior in duration, he's immortal, and access to God, he can enter the seventh dimension, and in power. And so he was miffed, if you will, that God found his creation, humankind, that was absolutely mortal, so fascinating. And so one of the things that makes mankind fascinating to Yahweh is that we were given free will. Malak do not have free will. They follow orders. They do what they're told. And so with humankind having free will, we then have the possibility of being engaging, of being fun, of being someone worth spending time with. And so God found us and created us specifically with free will so that we could be creative. You know, without free will, you can't be creative. And so everything that Satan has done to try to undermine that which God loves has been a counterfeit of what God originally stated, because Hasatan hasn't the capacity to be creative.
Now, does that explain why the third of the Malak went with him? Because they were under his command, and he just probably told them,
"Yeah,
this is what we're going to do."
It's a militaristic construct, and the militaristic construct there are hierarchies. So yeah, he was among the, we know that Gabriel was and Michael were senior officers, if you will, in the regime that is the Malak. Malaks are not loving little creatures like they're predicted in angelic scenes. That is not who they are. They are simply tools of Yahowah. You don't need to feel for them because they can't feel for you. Like, there is a Malak whose entire job for at least the last 2,000 years and probably 2,500 years has been to guard the Ark of the Covenant that sits about 20 feet under the asphalt of the Jerusalem bus station. And his full-time job is to guard it. And one day, the climax of his career as a Malak is he's going to take the 2 tablets of stone that are in it, and he's going to hold them up for the whole world to see. Now, that's going to happen when the Torahless one imposes the Sunday law and thereby imposes Christianity, just as Theodosius did in 400 CE. But they don't, the Malak, and understand all of the religion that's going to be presented here, particularly the masculine name of the false god, Baal. Mm-hmm. That is the name and title of Satan. And he is directly attributed to the religion that God is trying to dislodge his people's affinity. And that's the whole story that is being presented here. But yes, I think you're right that Halal ben Shakar was a senior officer, and he ordered the Malak under him to rebel, and that was a third of them, because there were 3 senior officers, amongst the Malak. That would be why it would be a third of them.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Gabriel, Michael, and Halal. These are the 3. So this says if. So here's now, there are 5 conditions here. These 5 conditions are the same number of conditions that exist with the covenant. And the first condition here and the second condition that are listed here are identical to the first and second condition of the covenant. So that is why this is important. It says, if with all your heart you return to Yahowah, choosing to turn away and removing accordingly the foreign, pagan, and worthless gods from among you. It is the most ironic aspect of forming a relationship with God from the human perspective, that it is religion that God wants us to abandon. That religion is the very thing that God points out first and foremost that we must leave, we must disassociate with before we can associate with God. So this argument, for example, between science and religion, God would side with science.
Sure.
He's not on the side of religion. Yeah, he's not on the side of religion.
He just hates this stuff, and why we don't get it.
Yeah, he never once says disassociate from science.
No. In fact, he says, figure this out. It gives you opportunities. It lays out everything in science that's been a big deal in my lifetime. It's right there in the Torah.
Yep. So he's asking his children to walk away from foreign, pagan, worthless gods. Let me give you some names of some foreign, pagan, worthless gods. Mary, the Queen of Heaven and Mother of God. Let me give you another one. Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ. Allah. Shiva. Hindu. Every one of them, pagan and worthless gods.
I'd say that even calling them gods is kind of a...
it's a term that Yahowah applies to them, and it's one of the reasons why I think it's important to translate Elohim, which is the Hebrew word for gods, as gods, because there are a lot of people that say, no, God is the name of a pagan god, and therefore you can't say it. Well, that's not true.
No, it's not.
Because there was no pagan god named God. There was a pagan god named Gad. He's immaterial in the whole scope of history. And there's another one called Got, but he was also immaterial in terms of the totality of history. And the actual God uses Elohim to describe himself as a title and to describe false gods. Mm-hmm. And just because Eloah, from which it is based, means almighty, to translate Elohim as mighty ones, that is a status that would be ridiculous to ascribe to false gods. They're not mighty ones. But false gods is a perfectly good term to describe them. Man has elevated them to a status of God. They're gods to men, even though they are false gods. So.
Still proper in context. I mean, you talk where they're, you've got to use a word that people understand.
Right. And that's the word that people understand, and it's the reason God chose to use that word. False gods. So they've chosen false, pagan, and worthless gods, alien and valueless, incomprehensible and improper, pretend and disguise, someone else's disastrous and ruinous, another person's mistaken and feigned pretense of God. Jesus Christ is another person's pretense of God.
Yes, it is.
The commonality between Yahusha, who was Torah observant and who walked through the very steps that Yahowah had invited him to walk through to fulfill the Moed Mikra, and the character and nature of the individual that has been conceived named Jesus Christ, a name that does not apply to Yahusha. It's a false name, it's a false title, and the character of the Jesus musing, myth, has far more in common with Dionysus than it has with the actual Yahusha.
Right.
So the Christian Jesus is absolutely a false god created by other people. You can pray to him all day long. He ain't never going to hear you. You can ask him for miracles all day long. He ain't never going to answer you.
You can't heal in the name of Jesus.
No. Has never been done. Will never be done. So he says, if you with all your heart, and heart here is, it's an interesting realization. In ancient Hebrew, and a good friend of ours, the gentleman will be working with later this evening, JV, sent this to me after a considerable amount of research that he went through. The heart is considered the seat of emotions today.
Yeah.
Where the head is considered the seat of reason today. But in the ancient world, it was the kidneys that were considered the seat of emotions. The heart was considered the seat of reason. That's the place where you process that which you've come to know and you reasoned your way through it so that you'd come to understand it.
Yes.
So a definition of heart would be leb in Hebrew, your inner being, that which constitutes your most authentic nature and becomes the very fabric of your life, the place where that which is known, understood, and accepted serves to provide perspective, guiding your thoughts and conduct, becoming a source of your understanding and motivation, goals and ambitions, preferences and purpose, volition and judgment. So if with all your heart you return to Yahowah, that means, of course, that the vast preponderance of people are going in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
And he has stated why they're going in the wrong direction. Because they're all following false gods. So he wants you to return to him and abandon all affinity for false gods. And then especially the Astartes. And it's written in the plural, Astartes, the queens of heaven, the mothers of God, the virgins with child. Do you know a religion today that has statuary that people refer to as the Queen of Heaven, Mother of God, Madonna and child, Virgin and child?
Well, I'm sure it's Roman Catholicism, but I think Orthodoxy is also
correct.
Does it as well.
Yeah, between Orthodox Christianity and Roman Orthodox, you've got about 1.5, 1.7 billion people.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it's also in the more formal versions of Protestant Christianity. There's also statuary to Mary, and this Astarte. While she was known as Astarte when this was written, what had her name become?
Mary.
Well, it has in Roman Catholicism, but before that it was Ishtar.
Oh, Ishtar, yes.
And Ishtar had a spring festival that was celebrated on the Sunday nearest the vernal equinox.
Close Easter.
Yeah, Easter. Bears the same name. In fact, the first 4 or 5 editions of the King James, when Yosha said, I want to go celebrate Passover with his disciples, they changed Passover to Easter. Named after the pagan god. They took the same holiday at the same time of year. And by the way, Ishtar is said to have been dead for 3 days, and then resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Ishtar is also impregnated by the sun at that time. That's how she becomes the Queen of Heaven and the Mother of God. And what's 9 months after the spring equinox?
I think that's December 25th.
You're right. Yeah, the winter solstice. And so that's when the son of the sun was born. So it's the nativity also of Ishtar. Christmas and Easter are based on Astarte. And beyond the just Christmas and Easter, how devoted are Roman Catholics to the Rosary? Isn't saying the Rosary, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord be with thee? Isn't saying the Rosary their penance for being absolved of sin?
I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. I mean, I'll have to ask Terry to be sure. I haven't grown up Catholic, but boy, certainly it plays into it.
Oh, you go to confession, they'll say, all right, say 5 rosaries. Yeah. By the way, the rose, wasn't that Astarte's the principal symbol?
Mm-hmm.
And so the rosary is named, they didn't even hide any of this.
No.
They didn't hide Easter, they didn't hide the rosary, they didn't hide Christmas, they didn't hide Sunday worship, which was part of this. They didn't even hide Lent. You know what Lent was? That's when the husband, who then was later called the son of Astarte, was killed by a wild boar. That's the first Lent. It was called Weeping for Tammuz. It's the 40 days before Easter. And Catholics celebrate it today. Same number of days, same purpose. Deprivation and weeping.
They have to give up something for Lent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they didn't even hide any of it.
Yeah. We should give up Astarte.
Amazing. Anyway, it says that in addition, choose to turn away from the Astartes, the queens of heavens, the mother of the god, the virgins, and child. and choose to firmly fashion through unwavering preparation and confident determination your heart for Yahowah. This happens to be coincide with the second condition of the covenant. After walking away from your country, and the country that Yahowah asked his children to walk away from, those who are interested in participating in the covenant, is Babylon. And Babylon is from Babel. It means corrupt, to be confused. The basis of the title that Christians have applied to the book that they lug around, the Bible. It means with Baal, with the Lord. The Lord, as we'll find out, is the primary guise of Satan. And so it is Yahowah saying, what I want you to do, instead of associating with these false gods, and particularly the god Is that became the basis of Christianity, what I want you to do instead is to get to know me with all proper diligence, with preparation and confident determination. Get to know me. And that's the second statement that he has. The first statement is walk away from your country, which is Babylon.
Yes.
And the second is trust and rely on me.
Right.
But the only way you can trust and rely on him is with unwavering preparation and confident determination to find out who he is and what he's offering. Otherwise, you can't rely on him.
Right.
Perfect match for the second condition of the covenant. Now, this next says, and it says, and work with him, with Yahowah, serving him, while approaching him exclusively. Is there the third condition of the covenant? To walk to God and become perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's walk to God. There's only one path to God. Begins with Pesach, Passover, and ends with being in God's home on Sukkah.
Yeah, you're participating in the Moed Mikri.
Right. So the way that you walk to God and become perfect happens to be the way that you walk to God. And so he's saying here that he wants you to work with him, serving with him, while approaching him exclusively. The perfect match for the third condition of the covenant.
Yeah.
And then it says, if you do these things, then he will deliver you out of the hand and the influence of the Palestine, the foreign foes who invade the promised land, invoking fear while separating and terrorizing. The Philistine is the group that we really drilled down on to understand in our program a week ago.
Right.
It's invasive, militaristic nations. Who's the most invasive, most militaristic nation on earth today? Both terms. Apply both terms to the fullest extent. The most invasive and the most militaristic nation on earth.
The United States.
Anyone close?
No.
Who was, going back in history, if you were to look at human history, who was the most invasive and militaristic nation in all of human history?
It has to be the Roman Empire.
Correct. What was the name of the government in Rome?
Senate.
There's a commonality there with the United States, isn't there?
Oh, gosh. We adapted everything.
Yeah. How about, what was the symbol of Rome? What the symbol that if you...
Eagle.
Yeah.
Eagle, you put it on a post, and that's when you had that, you were in command of that legion. Correct. Or however many.
Rome would wipe out 100,000 people if their eagle was in any way defamed.
Also sounds familiar.
It does, man.
Doesn't it? I mean, we've adopted everything.
We are the manifestation of Rome's influence today, us and the Roman Catholic Church. And I don't want to overstate the fact that of America vis-a-vis the Roman Catholic Church, but those are the two most overt manifestations of Rome today. And of Rome, God said it's the most vicious beast that the earth will ever know. In fact, he said that that beast will tread upon the entire world.
To the end.
Viciously, right to the end. And there's only two entities that can be seen that way today. The Roman Catholic Church, which is a worldwide organization of 1.2 billion lost souls, and the United States, with its massive military projecting to force the world over. So this is what God had to say, that He was. If we walked away from religion, He would save us from politics. Now, those things. No. What I would like to do is to drill down a little bit on who are the Philistines, and we'll consider who are the queens of heaven and the mothers of God. Here first on the Philistines. It says, the peoples, I'm going to read now from Shemoth, names Exodus 15:14. The peoples have heard, choosing to continually tremble in fear, with regard to the writhing anguish, the distressing agony, the suffering, which has seized the inhabitants of Palestina. Picking up where we left off, it says the peoples. This is from which can be families and nations. It was written in the plural as Amim. The peoples have heard. The masses have heard. Choosing to continually tremble in fear with regard to the writhing anguish which has seized those who have settled, those who live in, the inhabitants of Palestina. This is fascinating, because what it says is that this is the first time that this name is used. And the first time the name is used, and it's from a Hebrew root that conveys an invader who attacks, invoking fear, separating and terrorizing. The first time it's used, we're told what this group of people are like. Now, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the Philistines, to use the modern transliteration of Palestina, there is no indication whatsoever that they were an independent racial group.
No.
There's no indication they were an independent ethnic group. There is absolutely no building that they built that has survived their ravages of time. Not one. They did not have a written alphabet, so there's nothing of their history that is known. There is no record of them anywhere in the world apart from what's written in the pages of the Torah and prophets. So 100% of what is known about them is derived from what Yahowah has to say about them. And the first mention of them is that they were terrorists. But it's not just saying that they were terrorists in terms of their dealings with other people. They abused their own.
Yeah, they terrorized themselves.
Yeah, how many times have I said that, the first victims of Islam and the most universal victims of Islam are Muslims?
Absolutely.
Muslims rape more Muslims. They rob more Muslims. They kill more Muslims.
Okay.
They terrorize more Muslims than they do infidels by probably a ratio of 100 to 1.
Well, the most bizarre thing is when you were doing a lot of news stories at the time, and in order to get even with something they didn't like against the West, they would go blow up some of their own people.
Correct. Yeah, Muslim.
How bizarre can you get?
The people known as Palestinians today, people who have ignorantly, errantly attributed this ancient name to themselves to create the illusion that they are a people and that they have a nation and that Israel is occupying their nation. Just to say that and to know that Bonn of the United Nations is bellyaching that Israel is ruthlessly occupying the land of the Palestinians, just shows you how disgusting, how ignorant, how irrational, how grotesquely immoral the world has become.
Yeah.
Because not only is there nothing known about these people, apart from what Yahowah has to say about them, and he uses a term to describe them that says they're foreign invaders. So if they really are the Philistines, guess what? They don't belong there. They're foreign invaders. But what's most amazing of all is that what we know of them from Yahowah's testimony is that they became an irritant to the Assyrians as the Assyrians were battling, and the Babylonians later were battling the Egyptians.
They were working their way down the coast.
And as they were working their way down the coast, these guys were always in the way.
Yeah.
And so they just did away with them. And there is no record as to whether or not they wiped them all out to the last, or they brought some of them back to Babylon as slaves. But all we know is that what few people may have survived it. There isn't a building that survived it. There isn't a remnant that survived it. A few, on the best of circumstances, may have been brought back as slaves and eventually died there or integrated into the greater Babylonian and then Persian empire. There is no such thing as a Palestinian person, a Palestinian people. The last of them, and we're going back nearly 550 BCE. That's when all traces of them was lost. But when they were known, they terrorized their own people. They anguished their own people. They afflicted their own people. It's talking about how they were treating their own.
Yeah, they're disgusting.
Right. That's the reason for the flood. Yahowah said that man was treating his fellow man horribly. Yeah. Immorally, viciously, ruthlessly. That's what they were doing. So I guess the Palestinians do have something in common with the Philistines.
Adapted their characteristics, haven't they?
They certainly have. And they are invaders who do not belong.
Right.
So that's the first reference to them. Then we read in Samuel 17:26, and Dod, which means the beloved, corrupted to David. There's no V in Hebrew, so it's definitely not David. Could it be Dod with a supplied I before the D? Possibly, but we know there's two consonants and one vowel. The consonants are both D's, and the vowel is a wa. Dod. Said to the individuals who stood by him. Him is Goliath. Approaching by proclaiming, what shall be done with regard to the individual who beneficially strikes down and defeats, destroying this one Philistine, and who removes the disgraceful blasphemy, the reproach and criticism, the rebuke, the contempt and scorn, as well as the taunting insults from upon Yisrael, the individuals who engage and endure with God. So what Dod is saying here is that if this man who has terrorized Israel, who is now taunting Israel, and taunting Israel's God, Yahowah, who is mocking everything that Israel stands for, and threatening everything that Israel stands for.
And it was working.
Right. If a man does away with this one Philistine, what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to Dod at that point? That's what Dod is asking you. For indeed, who and what is this uncircumcised? If he's uncircumcised, he is absolutely, unequivocally estranged from the covenant. So he's a foreigner. So that,
and in his case, he's actually taking a mark. That would be the same as taking a mark for Satan.
Right, right. So he is excluded, and therefore an invader in Israel and the covenant. So, outsider. So what indeed, who and what is this uncircumcised Philistine? So the first thing he's doing is saying, who is this? What does this person represent? That's what he's asking you. Who is Goliath? What does he represent? He represents man's arrogance. He represents the military and the special troops, the Green Berets, the Rangers, the Navy SEALs.
The trained killer.
The trained killer. That's what he represents. So he describes the armaments that he had and his attitude. And he says, so who is this? What does this guy represent? That's the first question. Then the second question is, so what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to the individual who does away with him? Because this individual that does away with him is doing away with someone who is taunting, mocking, annoying the people. And in fact, it even says that Goliath's testimony caused people to think improperly, so as to lean in the wrong direction. That's the next statement here. So, for indeed, who and what is this Philistine, this individual who, with his physical stigma, serves as a sign that he is owned by another, that he should insult and taunt and ridicule and mock, annoying, with evil rhetoric that causes the people to think improperly, so that they lean in the wrong direction and take the wrong course of action with regard to the proper arrangement established by the living God. So, what does Philistine represent? It represents that which misleads, that which is improper. Rhetoric that causes people to move in the wrong direction, to be out of sync with the proper arrangement of things as God has established them. The person with a stigma that is owned by another. And so, Dode has asked you, how are you going to respond to the individual who does away with it? Are you going to build a statue to him that shows him, by the way, he shows Dode uncircumcised? You're going to build a statue to him so that you can worship a man whose appearance you have no clue as to what he looked like? And put that statue in a religious building? Is that what you're going to do? Or are you going to think, wait a minute, this person with a single stone did away with the most formidable warrior who was the best armed warrior of his day, and he went right up to him and said, "You're disgusting. You do not belong here. Your rhetoric is appalling." And he's asking you, so how are you going to respond to the person that does away with it? And Dode's not saying that he wants you to worship him. Dode's not saying, I want you to honor me. He's saying he wants you to realize you can respond the same way. You don't need a military. What you need to do is to come to know God as he revealed himself. And understand what he's offered and act upon it. And you too will be able to silence these foes.
I don't think most people can wrap their head around that anymore, that they could actually live in this world and be protected by Yahweh without an army. They just worship the army. They think.
You know, when I got my full appreciation of this was
when you went to Israel that time.
Yeah, when I went to Israel and I had Al-Qaeda and Hamas and Hezbollah with automatic weapons pointed at my head, and I'm in a dungeon with a single bars on the windows and unarmed with anything other than a pen. And I'm provoking them. I'm doing the same thing Doug's doing here, man. I'm provoking them. I said, your rhetoric is disgusting. You're idiots. And yet they wanted to kill me, but they didn't. And then since I've written Prophet of Doom and done 3,000 radio interviews on it, I've had many thousands of death threats. And yet I'm the only person who's ever done this in their own name, who does not hide. Why? Because what is a gun going to do me any good? What is a police protection going to do me any good when I've got Yahowah? And it's not like that. I've done something that deserves Yahowah's protection. It's just Yahowah said I want a job done.
Yahowah does,
and He protects His children. If you do what He wants, He protects your children. Now, if I made a stupid decision today, flying my airplane, it's not God's job to protect me. I'm not doing something that is of Yahowah's business. But if I'm exposing and condemning Satan's most ridiculous religion,
he's right there with you,
man, every step of the way. And that is what Dode is saying. Dode is stepping between the most belligerent warrior of his day and God's chosen people. And he defeats him.
And what's not to like about that guy? Now you know why Yahowah.
Yeah, loves him. Right.
You're right, pal.
But by the way, I can speak for myself in this regard. It didn't require any courage on Dod's part whatsoever. It required some backbone, required some confidence, but no courage. If Yah is doing the protecting, if Yah is doing the guiding, then why do you need courage?
Step up to the plate.
Right. Just show some backbone. So anyway, this is our first explanation, or second explanation of who the Philistines are, and we come to learn a lot. Now it says, over and upon Peleth, I trumpet a warning, and I shout for joy. This is one of Dod's statements regarding the Philistines. Over and upon Peleth, the land occupied by Pelisti, the foreign foes who attack, attempting to invade, invoking fear while separating and terrorizing, I trumpet a warning and I shout for joy. He is explaining Teruah here.
Absolutely.
The way of man from Babylon to Assyria, to the Median Purge, to the Greeks, to the Romans, including the Spartans and the Carthaginians, and now today the Americans, was the way of the Spanish and the way of the colonial Brits.
Absolutely.
Is to rely on their weapons. That's what they did. And what Yahweh was saying, if you're going to live by the sword, then I'm going to give you this warning. You'll die by it. You don't need a military. Not only don't you need a military, it's counterproductive.
It's turn on you.
Right. Saul's military was unable to defeat the Philistines. We're going to learn here that
the one in Israel.
Yeah, and then what we're going to find is that that Shamuel encourages the Israelites to disassociate with the Astartes, the queens of heaven, the mother of God, the virgin and child, and the Baals, the lords.
Mm-hmm.
And they do so, and Shamuel says, hey, well, we've done what you asked for, Yahweh. They did what I asked them to do on your behalf, and Yahweh says that for the rest of the time that Shamuel lives, not a single Philistine will ever step foot in Israel.
Right. And that was true.
And that's the way it was. So Dod is exclaiming, and Dod's, a long time after Shamuel. We're talking probably 400 years. And he is exclaiming that while they wiped out Saul and Saul's family and humiliated Yisrael, that Dod shouts out the warning, don't buy into the militaristic state. And he shouts for joy because rather than relying on the militaristic state, you rely on Yahweh. So this is the progression of things. Then we read down here, this is now, we're turning to Joel 4:1-4. This is starting to get really interesting as we see what's in Yoel, we see what's in the Judges, we then turn to Yirmiyahu. It just gets more and more interesting. And this, by the way, is the fun of transitioning between knowing and understanding. Knowing is fun. Knowing is fun means that you go in and you translate and study what Yahweh has said. That's how you come to know. But you can't transition from knowing to understanding unless you make the connections between things. In fact, the Hebrew word for understanding is to connect. It means to connect, to make connections. Is how you transition from knowing to understanding. The way you do that is you read other things that God has said about the things that He's talking about. Mm-hmm. So we're engaged right now in the process of understanding. So this reads, yes, indeed. Behold, now look up and pay attention. In those days and at the proper time, when beneficially as a result of the relationship, I return to change the direction of and restore accordingly the captives whom I'll free, returning the property and possessions of Yahudah, these individuals who relate to Yah and who are related to Yah, and Jerusalem, which is the source from which instruction and guidance on reconciliation flow. I will collect and assemble all of the Gentile nations together, and I will bring them down, lowering them and prostrating them towards the valley of Josaphat, the place where Yahweh executes judgment. Oh, we got more coming, but just that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So here is Yahweh says, I'm returning. You know, the second coming of Christ, bullcrap.
No.
There wasn't a first Christ, much less a second coming of Christ. The diminished manifestation of Yahweh that was here in Yahusha was his sixth appearance. The last time that he was here, when he fulfilled the first 4 Moed Mikre in year 4,000 Yah, just as he was predicted to do in the creation account on the 4th day.
Yeah.
And now, what God is saying, and he says it over and over again, in first person as Yahweh, he says, when I return.
Now, is it any way you can read that and not see 2033? I mean, that's just so...
Oh, yeah, because again, you make connections, and you make all the other connections to what occurs in 2033 in Yom Kippurim. And Yirmiyah 33, he's specifically talking about his return on Yom Kippurim, where he's going to reconcile his relationship with Yisrael and with Yehudah. So the very thing that he's saying there, when I return accordingly, and I free the captives, and he's also referencing what we read in Yasayah 17 and 18, right, where he's talking about doing this very thing for the children of Yisrael. It's in Malach. It's throughout the prophets that Yahweh tells us that he is going to return. It's even in Hosea. He says, I divorced them. They're no more than my children. But there will be a day when I will call them my children, and they will refer to me as their God. And the day in Zechariah, when they look upon me whom they have pierced, as he returns. So to appreciate the fact that he's talking about his return on Yom Kippurim in year 6,000 Yah, you have to make some more connections. The connections are all there. They're all obvious. But to transition from knowing this to understanding it does require making those connections. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It's for those of us who have considered those statements, it's obvious that, yes, indeed, behold, now look up and pay attention. Yeah, in those days, and at the proper time being Yom Kippurim, when beneficially, Yom Kippurim, as a result of the relationship, Yom Kippurim means to reconcile the relationship, when beneficially, as a result of the relationship, I return, and to change the direction of and restore, Yahweh and Yirmiyah 33 speaks specifically of restoring and renewing and reaffirming his covenant, right? And restore accordingly the captives whom I'll free. Isn't 2033 and Yom Kippurim a Yobel year?
Well, that was what I was going to say. Is once you know what a Yobel is and which ones are available, and when you can trace them, because they're every 50 years, then it tells you where the prophecy, the date. It has to be that year because there's not another one in time, and you connect that dot with when Israel is when they return. There's no more Yobels left.
Yeah, in fact,
it has to be on that thing. So if you think God didn't tell you when it's going to all take place, you're just kidding yourself.
Yeah, and that's why writing is never done when you're trying to convey something that Yahweh said. This is actually the preamble. One verse that was going to go before the chapter was writing on God or government, and it became now a treatise to return to God. You have to first leave religion, and it's 46 pages, and yet I didn't even pick up on the Yobel reference here. Mm-hmm. So now I've got to add that. But you're right. When he's saying free captives and return the possessions, which is the land, what is the principal theme of the Yobel?
Well, everyone is set free, and you return, all debts are forgiven. I mean,
and the land is returned to Yahweh so we can all enjoy it.
Yeah.
So you're right. I've got to go right back here, and this is a reference to the Yobel. The Yobel years that are the most important are the Yobel of year 2000 Yah, when Abraham and Isaac with Yahweh and Yosha affirmed the covenant on Mount Moriah. Right. And exactly 2,000 Yobel later, 2,000 years later, 40 Yobel, on exactly that same place, Mount Moriah.
Same spot.
Yep. Exactly 40 Yobel later, Yosha fulfills the first Moed Mikre. This is year 4,000 Yah. And so 40 Yobel, 2,000 years from that date, which was the year 33 on the Roman pagan calendars, becomes year 6,000 Yah. That's 2033. And so he's talking about October 2nd at sundown. That is Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliations.
And you see how much money you just saved all these people who want to go out and buy a prophecy book?
Yeah, this currently, by the way, what we're sharing from is part of a new book. I've completed one chapter. I had completed it prior to Kirk's edition here, but I'm well underway to also completing 2 other chapters. When 3 chapters are done, it'll be presented under the name of Observations. But
a great book.
It's currently available at the Power on High website, Frank's website, at the Bless Yahowah website, which plays and presents these archives, which is Richard's website, blessyahowah.com, and also on the Facebook page of Larry,
Unpopular Truth.
Unpopular Truth. So those are the places where it is currently, and it will, in addition, eventually be like YadaYah.com presents the entire volumes of Yada Yah, and Introduction to God.com presents the book called An Introduction to God. QuestioningPaul.com presents the review of Paul's first letter, Galatians, and proves that Paul was a false prophet. Observations will have a place of its own that'll be connected with the other books. Sure. Anyway, what this does say is that he's going to return the possessions and free the captives in Yehuda and Jerusalem. And by the way, what Yahweh says when he is in Yashayah in 17 and 18 is he says, after the Damascus falls, and Damascus is going to fall sometime in the next decade, prior to the beginning of the tribulation, and that Yisrael is thinned at the waist, and that Muslims by the millions flood into Yisrael, that they're going to rape and pillage their way into Jerusalem, and so there will be captives to free. Muslims enslave. That's what they do. There will be captives to free, and they confiscate which belongs to others. And so Yahweh has predicted what the Muslims are going to do. Now he's telling you what he's going to do and how he is going to respond. And this actually is beyond even the Magog War. This is now the Yahweh speaking of the assault of Jerusalem during Armageddon. And so that's what he's specifically addressing here. He says, I will collect and assemble all of the foreign nations. Now, he didn't say I'm going to collect some of the foreign nations because, well, America is exceptional.
They're fine people.
How many times do we hear that America is the greatest nation on earth and we're an American exceptionalism?
Exceptionalism.
Yeah. Well, God says I'm going to assemble not one, not a handful, not some of, not even the majority of. He says
all means, right?
Yeah. Kol means all, and all is all means. He's going to assemble every Gentile nation. Not some of them, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, and by the way, he ain't assembling them for a party. He isn't assembling them for a festival. He is not going to say, hey, you did a great job. If you're judged by Yahweh, you're in serious trouble. If Yahweh, you're one of the nicest people I've ever known, Kirk. If Yahweh were to judge you,
I'm doomed.
You're doomed, right? Look, Dode is the smartest dude I've ever come to know. If Yahweh were to judge Dode, he'd be finished. And so, you don't want to be judged. That's the whole idea of being part of Yahweh's family and availing yourself of the remedies that Yahweh has provided, the benefits that Yahweh has provided for his covenant children, is that we're not judged. We're shown standing up in God's presence. These people who are being judged are showed bowing down in God's presence. You do not want to bow down in His presence. You don't want to be judged by Him, because it's 100% of the time the outcome is either bad or worse.
Or worse, yeah.
Bad is that your soul is extinguished.
You're over. But the other is much worse.
Much worse. That's an eternal separation. That's your soul goes into a black hole and is kept there forever.
And you're conscious.
Yeah, that's the worst. Yeah, it's the worst. And so He's going to judge the Gentile nations. And so the very best that can be said of them is that some of the victims of their militaristic nature and their hostility to God, some of the victims will simply cease to exist. The leaders, that's not what's going to happen to the leaders. They're all going to be sent to what Christians would call hell, which is where political and religious leaders go and where they will spend eternity. So He's going to assemble all of the Gentile nations together. He's going to look at them all the same. And I'm going to bring them down, lowering them, prostrating them towards the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, it's not Josaphat.
No.
And the name was chosen for a place, for a specific reason. It's where Jehoshaphat means Yahweh executes judgment.
Judgment, right.
Bad thing, man. Hey, He's going to be fair. But the outcome...
Yeah, you're falling on their own sword.
Yeah, the outcome's not good here.
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, being good is immaterial.
Yeah.
Well, I was a good person. It doesn't matter.
Your point that Larry said is the only thing to be is right.
You're right. And so we're going to continue this in a moment. I will collect and assemble all of the foreign Gentile nations together. And I will bring them down, lowering them and prostrating them towards the valley of Jehoshaphat, the place where Yahweh executes judgment. Then I will render judgment against them, there and then, concerning and on behalf of my people, my family, and my nation, and on behalf of my inheritance, the property I gave as a gift to Israel, to those individuals who engage and endure with God, which they have scattered and dispersed among the nations, having divided, apportioned, and distributed the rights to my land. Whoa!
Yeah. Don't mess with His place.
Man, is there any nation on earth that's saying that a two-state solution is the wrong way to go? Is there any nation on earth that's saying, wait a minute, God gave Israel to the Israelites, and we ought not encourage terrorists to be given what was given by God?
Yeah. Who gave you the right to steal something and give it to somebody else?
Right.
I mean, who are you? Even if you didn't like the deal, who gave you the right to go?
But I want you to name a Gentile nation that is wholly and universally opposed to the people, the mythical people known as the Palestinians, and is wholly and completely in support of Israel.
Doesn't exist.
There isn't one, is there?
And it won't exist.
No, and you're certainly not going to find a Christian church.
Mm-mm.
I mean, the Pope, scumbag that he is, Bergoglio, went over there and spent all that time with the mythical people known as the Palestinians and supported their carving out their nation out of the heart of Judea and Samaria. And, you know, there's Christian denominations upon denominations, the Presbyterians leading the way, that want to boycott Israel in favor of these terrorists, these Philistines.
Yeah.
And so that's why every Gentile nation is going to be judged. And they're going to be judged on this criteria. You know, God finds it despicable that we treat one another so harshly, why we're so murderous and vicious. And that's why God perpetrated the flood. And it's why He's returning, because if He didn't return, man's governmental and military viciousness would wipe out all life on earth. But what God really cares about is His people. He cares about His place, Israel, and His people, Israel. That's what he cares about. And so when man arrogantly, viciously, militaristically, politically, religiously tries to divide up and give away, separating his people from his land and giving his land to other people, God's going to hold those people accountable, which would be every Gentile nation on earth.
Well, to me, if Yahowah wants to chastise his children, he does it himself. He don't ask you to do it.
No.
He's got a plan. He don't need your help.
And since the inheritance of the land is central to the covenant, if you are opposed to Yahweh's gift to his children, it's like saying God doesn't have the right to give that which he created to the people he chose. And understand that what the land stands for. The land is synonymous with Eden, which is synonymous with God's home, which is synonymous with heaven, which is synonymous with the destination of the 7 Moed Mikre, Sukkah.
Yeah. Zion, the signpost.
Right. It is the Shabbat Eretz. You know what Shabbat means? 7 and promise. 7 and promise. He's going to tell us here that this is the Shabbat Eretz, that the land of 7, the land of promise. What's the 7th step along the way to God?
Sukkah.
Doesn't Sukkah mean tabernacle, speaking of God's home?
Sure. 7th day, the 7,000.
Where did Yahowah have his tabernacle?
In Israel.
Mount Moriah, right in the middle of Jerusalem, and Israel, right? Well, that's it. This is Mount Moriah, Jerusalem, Yehudah, Yisrael.
Right.
The land, Sukkah. The land, Shabbat. The land of promise, the land of 7. Sukkah, Yisrael, Eden are all synonymous. It's Yahweh's promise. It is what he gave to his covenant children. And man has no authority to take it away. And if you want to put yourself in opposition to God, there's nothing you can do that will irritate him more than you trying to sever the gift that he has provided, the benefit that he has provided to his people. That's it. And, you know, you mentioned that this statement is taking place in a Yobel year, because he says that the possession is going to be returned and the slaves are going to be liberated. It took place in a Yobel year. Yobel is 7 sevens.
Yes.
So that is what he's talking about here, and every Gentile nation on earth is going to be condemned, judged, found guilty for separating the Israelites from the land and then dividing up the land, apportioning it and distributing it. What does the United States want to do? It wants to draw a line in the sand and say, this part is the Palestinians. You take it, cut it out of Israel. They even want to give East Jerusalem to the Islamic terrorists. That's what the United States wants to do. It's what Europe wants to do. The Muslims, of course, want to take the whole thing. What right do we have to do that? That's what God is saying. Don't do that. And also, for my people, who they have cast away, tossing aside, apportioning and allotting, even giving away and trading the boys with the whore, and with the fat, unfaithful, wanton adulterers, and the girls whom they have sold and given up for the intoxicating wine which they have experienced and consumed. Yeah, we cargo and in people. We make merchandise of men. The slave trade has never been more prolific than it is today, particularly with the influence of Islam. But it's huge in the slave trade. It's huge in the United States.
Oh, God.
And this whore?
And the deal,
yeah, the whore is the start, the Queen of Heaven, Mother of God, Virgin and Child. That is the whore of Babylon. They are one and the same. So then, therefore, what are you to me? What are you to me? You're going to try to take away what I've given Israel? You're going to try to thwart my covenant? You're going to try to negate my promise? What are you to me? Sor, Tyre, the Phoenician coastal town, which means to besiege and to bind in adversarial form, to assault and to confine with hostility. That would be in Lebanon now. And Sidon, a Phoenician coastal town from Sud, making a game out of hunting. That means killing for sport.
Sport, yeah.
And all of the entirety of the territory and the regions of those wallowing in the dung, the Galath of Peles. Who are you to me? Those wallowing in the dung of Palestine. Who are you to me? Those of you up in Lebanon that besiege in adversarial form, that assault and confine with hostility. Look at Hezbollah in Lebanon attacking Israel. Who are you to me to make a game out of killing, of jihad? Particularly those wallowing in the dung of what Palestine represents. And you're nothing to me. I'm going to judge you and do away with you.
There's nothing unclear here, is it?
No. What is deserved? What's appropriate, God is asking? And what's to be done in recompense and retribution regarding you paying me back? Completely fulfilling your obligation to me. What you stole, what I gave. You stole what I created. You took my people. You abused them. You enslaved them. What's deserved? What's appropriate as a consequence for what you have done? So whenever and whatever attempt you make to provide payment and retribution to me, I will swiftly and hastily return what you deserve based upon what you have done, because it is the retribution you have earned upon your own head, especially upon your leaders.
And there's another reference to the two fates.
I don't know if God could be any more direct. This is what you have done. So he's asking, what do you deserve? What's the compensation? What's the retribution for abusing my people, from displacing my people from the land I gave them, for apportioning my people as if it was yours land to divide? Now, what on earth is the proper penalty, consequence, recompense for that? And then when you attempt, once you are bowed down before me in judgment, to say, okay, we'll give it back, God's going to say, yeah, right. Here's what you deserve.
We take it back.
Yeah, here's what you deserve. Right on your roche, on your leaders. By the way, it's interesting to say that, God tells us that the prayer of somebody who is Torahless has dung all over their face.
Uh-huh.
And so he sees those who are Torahless, who pray to him as they're covered in dung. And these people are wallowing in the dung of Palestine.
Yeah. Got that right away.
Oh, so Joel 4:1 through 4 is pretty amazing. Now, there are a fair amount of things that are known about, now that we know what the Philistines are. There's a fair amount of things that are known about Astarte. Astarte was the thing that God said, if you walk away from, I will deliver you, I will save you from the invasive militaristic nation that doesn't belong, the foreigner that acts so cruelly and viciously. So there's actually a fair amount that is known about Astarte. That's the thing we're asked to leave. Literally thousands of inscriptions depicting her title. Countless idols inscribed with her name. Hundreds of temples erected in her honor. The Canaanites and Phoenicians worshipped Astarte as the horned goddess of fertility, of sexuality and warfare. In Persia, she was the horned goddess of love and fortune, especially in war. In Egypt, she was depicted as the Sphinx. You know the Sphinx is Astarte?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. In Babylon, she took the form of the winged lion. Her other symbols included a star within a circle. Isn't that the symbol of the U.S. Army?
It's on every airplane in World War II.
Yeah. The crescent moon. Well, there's a religion that chose that as their symbol, isn't there?
Yeah, that's an easy one.
Yeah. It's the fish. Well, there's a religion that uses the fish as their symbol. They call it an ichthus. You see it on bumper stickers of the idiots that have been duped by it. And, of course, as the dove. She was deified as the evening star, known as Venus. Astarte's statuary and frescoes were most always in the naked form, and she became the model figurehead on the bows of sailing ships. She is shown throughout antiquity as a 5-pointed star. That's the American star.
Mm-hmm.
Because 5 is the pentagram form, which is 5 in the Torah, is the number of confusion. It represents Hasatan.
And we got 50 of them.
Yeah, we got 50 of them. 5 times 10 of these stars. We're really into it.
Yeah.
Yep. She was known in antiquity as a rose, the rosary. And as I mentioned, one of her primary symbols was that of a fish. The sign of the mother goddess was drawn as 2 opposing crescent moons. That's how they got the fish, to represent the female genitalia. And it was later appropriated by Roman Catholics to depict their new religion and called an ichthus. The symbol was, and by the way, they knew that they were appropriating the pagan symbol at the time they were doing it.
Well, I think everything I've ever read, they know it and they incorporate it in order to draw in another crowd.
Yep.
You know, it's all about bringing in the flock.
Right, making people comfortable so that you can control them by incorporating their religion into your religion. She was known as the golden calf in Egypt, with a sun disk overhead. So she's found throughout Egypt. In fact, the first statue that the Israelites built on their, and once they reached Mount Horeb, was a golden calf. That's Astarte. So this is who they are worshiping. However, knowing that Astarte was venerated by their religious ancestors throughout Israel, it's interesting that the Masoretes edited the name of the whore, implying that Bosheth, abomination, should be read in its place. It's just like they wrote Adonai every place that there was Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, so that you would read my Lord instead of Yahweh.
Oh.
But here they changed the name to Asheroth based on Bosheth, when Yahweh actually wrote Astarte. It's from Astarte, and which became Ishtar. It's the basis of the golden calf. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. She is the whore of Babylon.
Yeah.
By the time she became Aphrodite and Venus, her attributes included love and marriage, beauty and happiness, laughter and pleasure, in addition to victory at war. Early Roman Catholics taught that Aphrodite embodied the conjugal love, which was had its origin in the conjunction of the Lord and His church.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how you get the nuns.
Satan, yeah. And by the way, the nun, the word is translates fish and is derived from the image of Astarte. And the rose, which was her symbol, became the basis of the rosary, a tribute to the same Mother Earth, Mother Goddess. Her holiest festival was actually called Estar, Easter, ready-made counterfeit for Roman Catholics. They didn't have to change the name. They didn't even have to change the dates. They didn't have to change the purpose. They just Christianized it, even bringing along with it the Easter eggs, Easter bunny, Easter ham, and Easter cakes.
Well, you got to have the ham so you can kill off the Talmud. Yeah.
So after all, the whore was a fertility goddess, which is why you have a bunny laying eggs.
Everything is, yeah.
Yep. Moreover, like the Christian Jesus,
they were round circles. They were to the sun god too. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. By the way, Astarte, Ishtar, she remained dead for 3 days. This is the god that died. went down to the underworld for 3 nights before being resurrected. Consistent also with the Babylonian worship of Tammuz, who was Ishtar's son by the way of the Lord Bel. And then, of course, after being impregnated by the supreme sun god, we have the nativity of Ishtar's son, celebrated 9 months later on December 25th, providing Christendom with a pre-existing pagan celebration upon which to base their Christmas. The festival of Ishtar in the middle of August coincides with the Roman Catholic feast of the Assumption of Mary.
But that ain't what it means to me.
Yeah, well, we're going to read these Israelites celebrating all of these Ishtar Easter festivals and getting their whole family involved in the celebration of Easter. And God doesn't say that, I know this is not what it means to you, so you're okay.
Yeah.
God says, I'm going to see to it that your foes destroy you because what you're doing is despicable.
Yeah.
So the old line, that's not what it means to me, don't matter.
No.
Doesn't matter. So quite simply stated, Astarte, Ishtar, Isis, Aphrodite, Venus, India, Diana, Mary, as the Blessed Virgin, Madonna and Child, Mother of God, Queen in Heaven, Lady of the Rosary, Hearer of Petitions, and the Lady of Biblos, the Lady of the Bible, provided the unifying fable for the religions of the Sumerians, Philistines, Canaanites, Egyptians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Phoenicians, Syrians, Persians, Indians, Greeks, Romans, Carthaginians, and Cypriots. And today, the Whore of Babylon reigns supreme in Christianity, embodying all of her former myths, including serving as the basis for Easter Sunday and Christmas. Yahowah could not have chosen a more revealing character to portray the nature of religious deception, especially how each successive religion co-opts aspects of its predecessors in order to appeal to the masses. One of the most common and spellbinding themes among the world's religions revolves around Astarte, Ishtar, including her names, her titles, her symbols, her rituals, and her festivals, all of which were born and bred in Babylon. She is the Whore of Babylon.
Yeah.
I suppose that's why Yahowah condemns the myth of Ishtar, Mary, as the Mother of God in Yirmiyah, Jeremiah, in conjunction with his mockery of the Easter rituals and the Christmas tree that her veneration inspired. It is also in that same book that Yahowah impugns the greatest Christian lie of all, that there is a renewed covenant and thus a divinely inspired New Testament.
Yeah.
But we're at least a week away from turning to Yirmiyah to understand it. But we'll get there. Now, none of this stopped Pauline Christianity from doing what the goddess's name actually conveys. If you look at in Hebrew and you look up the basis of Astarte, Ashar, and Asherah,
right,
it means to become rich by increasing the flock while taking a tithe.
Taking a tithe. and that's so dear to God's heart.
Oh, my. Even in America, the five-pointed pentagram conveying satanic overtures, so the five-pointed stars, which adorn the U.S. flag, as you pointed out, 50 of them, were first used throughout the ancient world to venerate the goddess and were known as the Star of Ishtar. Combining this with her crescent moon, we find the origin and symbol of Islam. Further, in Islam Quran, it offers more references and tributes to Mary than does the Christian New Testament.
Really?
Oh, far more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's whole chapters devoted to, they call her Miriam, which was closer to her actual name. But, yeah, she's constantly presented as the great mother in the Quran. Whore of Babylon's influence continues to be pervasive. Two most widely practiced religions in the world, both with her. In fact, if you were to combine socialist secular humanism with its love of Mother Earth, then you've got all three.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
So it is extraordinary how enveloped mythology.
Appeal.
Yeah.
I mean, this. I don't get it.
Estar's became a universal substitute, albeit bastardized, for human appeal for what Yahowah and the set-apart spirit actually represent. She is a counterfeit of those things. In pagan mythology, she was called the ruler of the heavens, the queen of heaven, the shining one, the mother of all deities, the leader of hosts, the possessor of the tablets of life's records. That's where she models Mary, who's supposed to be in purgatory, and she can shorten the stay and comfort those in purgatory. The great mother, the great goddess, the light of the world, the producer of life, the creator of the people, the guardian of the law, the righteous judge, the forgiver of sins, the lawgiver, the mother of war, the goddess of victory, the source of prophecy, the lady of vision, the lady of heaven and earth, who receives our prayers. So many Christians pray to Mary.
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm brought up in a Christian world or whatever world of religion, and I'm indoctrinated as a small child, I have a hard time ever getting out of that.
Mm-hmm.
However, if I was brought up in a world in Israel, and I wasn't, what would attract me to these neighbors and their religion? Was it just the sex in the temple?
Well, that's why you have to realize that, there was a lot of sex in the temple, clearly. But it's also,
a little bit,
what attracts people today to Christianity? I mean, Christianity is so obviously untrue. Paul was so clearly insane. And his writing is so contradictory. What attracts people to it today? It's that the lie has become pervasive, and those in authority make it very difficult for anyone to bow their back and go against the crowd. And throughout human history, if you were to be one of the people that took a stand, bowed your back, went in the opposite direction, you were ostracized.
Sure.
You couldn't engage in business. Your children would be mocked. You were ostracized, and often, like during the about 1,000 years of the reign of Roman Catholicism, you weren't just killed. You were tortured and publicly humiliated for questioning the authority of the lie and the liars. So that's why a lot of people go along. But what you find is that Yahowah does not impose himself. Yahowah says, here I am, this is what I'll do, this is what I'm offering, this is what I expect from you. If you meet these conditions, I will do the following things. And then he provides testimony every which way to say this is the consequence of making a bad choice in this regard. And this is how you resolve making a bad choice in this regard. And so Yahowah isn't braggadocious. He isn't imposing. He isn't compelling. He just simply says, I'm going to lay it out for you, and it's your choice. Man's way or my way. So the vast majority of people have chosen man's way.
But these people were living during the days of Samuel, and they knew all this. They knew the Torah.
Well, do you think that Samuel's ability to share the insights of the Torah were any more convincing than you and I? Having the whole Torah at our disposal, having all these lexicons to study all of these words and to be able to examine it letter by letter. What did they know that we don't know? We have Samuel's testimony, and we have all of Yahowah's prophecy on top of it, and we can read the Torah that he delivered ourselves. What did they have that we don't have?
And then it's still not compelling enough.
Right. I mean, I know. I have a lot of friends that
the whole time and didn't know about the Moabites and the Philistia and all. What threw them away?
Well,
seems like they go one generation and they're at it again.
I'm asked a lot. People making statements. It's hard to imagine a people who were brought out of Egypt after being slaves there for 400 years, and to see the mightiest military on earth drowned as they walk across the Gulf of Aqaba land bridge across the Red Sea, and that they are provided for, given this divine revelation by Yahowah himself, and why they would so quickly turn, and they did.
Yeah.
But that's human nature. You know, we were given a choice. Yahowah is not imposing, yeah. and my response is that I am convinced that our opportunity to know and experience Yahowah and to understand what he's offering is far greater right now than it was for them even during the Exodus.
Yeah.
I do not feel in any way, shape, or form the shortchange. If you were to give me the opportunity to go back then and be part of the Exodus, even to walk up Mount Horeb with Moshe to receive the Torah, and what we have the opportunity to do by searching the whole of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms and compare the predictions to human history, and to analyze these connections with the tools that we have today, we're in a far better position.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably just rhetorical. I just don't get somebody who grew up in Israel and then could be that tempted by. I mean, I can understand a few. It blows me away every time I think about it. Now, I understand slaves coming out of Egypt. They grew up around a Satanistic world, you know, and then came out and they were uneducated and everything else. So, I mean, they had a lot of reasons where you could build a case. They just
That's why Yahowah asked them to wipe out the host of this disease when they came into the Promised Land, but they wouldn't do it.
No.
Ishtar was also the perfect guise for Satan in yet another way. She paved the way for socialist secular humanism and its duplicitous moral code of political correctness. Astarte advanced an irrational and immoral mantra, whereby wrong was considered right, good was bad, delusion was correct. The goddess was the embodiment of dualities, love and hate, life and death, truth and lies, light and darkness, peace and war, happiness and sadness, good and bad. She was said to embrace these opposite positions simultaneously, a trait she shares with today's enlightened and progressive social, academic, and political mandates. But as such, she was temperamental and ferocious, and her unpredictable duplicity invoked considerable fear. She was as duplicitous as the politically correct mantra, "We are intolerant of intolerance."